All right, everyone. Welcome to another show of video game battles. Today we have Nick, also known as Cell Processing. Say hi.
Hey, dickheads.
Also, one of our competitors is Steve, or the one that kind of looks like he has a cheesy beard. Hi. Say hi, Steve.
Like,
There you go.
now, he finally gets himself a camera and gets on there, and you have to go making fun of him. You fake asshole.
It's beautiful. And then we have General
Oops.
Kitty, and I do not actually know your real name.
Dakota.
Dakota? Ah,
hmm
okay. Good name.
Thanks.
And for our fact checker, we have Miss Shelby, also known as Princess,
Why am I princess?
because that's what we
Like,
call you. All right,
oh,
Princess?
thank you.
All right. So, how's everyone doing today? Hopefully doing good.
Yeah,
Excellent.
staying
All right.
hydrated.
Staying hydrated. All right, so we got a pretty good show for you. For our first question, we will have, since E3 is right around the corner, is E3 relevant anymore? And way this is gonna go, I guess we're gonna go with Nick first. Go ahead.
I'm gonna say no, mostly because, as we've been seeing, the exhibitors and the actual attendance has been. It's not at its lowest. It's actually climbed a little bit back up, but it's steadily, year after year, declining again. As we saw today with Fallout 4, like we're not even getting surprises anymore. They're just like weeks ahead of time. They're like, well, it's gonna leak, so here you go. Might as well release it now. So it's for a lot of people like me. There's really not a whole lot of surprise in it anymore. So it almost feels kind of empty. And
Hmm.
I think if that trend kind of continues, it will become less and less relevant, to the point where it's almost non-existent now. Like I basically watch it for like the indie games. Like the
Okay.
biggest surprise for me last time around was Ori and the Blind Forest. So no, I
All
would
right.
say it's probably not relevant anymore.
No. All right. Anything else to add to that or no?
No, it's
No.
not relevant anymore.
Okay.
Worst host
Uh,
ever.
all right. We'll go with Kitty next. What do you say?
I have a lot to say about this.
Oh,
To start off, no, I don't think it's relevant. Uh, okay, so let's talk about some history about why E3 exists in the first place. Back in the day before E3 existed, publishers used to take their new products and stuff to showcases to show off their stuff. Interestingly, the most common one, the biggest one that they went to was CES in Las Vegas. And they didn't do well there because they weren't really treated the same as a lot of other industries were at the time. And in 1991, the CEO of Sega kind of had a really bad experience when he was there because they put all the video game industry kind of exhibits in the very back of the room behind all the porn vendors. And
okay.
they thought that was kind of insulting. And it rained really bad, and it got a bunch of their stuff wet. And so the CEO of Sega, I can't remember his name, decided that they weren't going to go back to CES anymore. And a year later, they kind of did their own showcase. I don't remember where they said it was, but it was really successful. They invited a bunch of third-party publishers, and it did really well. And after that, around the same time period, Congress was having this really large debate about violence in video games, and they decided that the industry needed to have some kind of way to give itself ratings and police itself and kind of make itself seem more professional. And so a bunch of publishers, Sega, Sony, a bunch of others, formed this organization called the Interactive Digital Software Association, which they eventually renamed to the ESA, Entertainment Software Association, in 2003. And the ESA at the time,
All
IDSA.
right, Kitty. Just to let you know, just kind of wrap it up on this one.
Okay, I'm getting towards the end.
Okay.
They made E3 at the time because
Mhm.
they wanted their industry to seem professional, basically. And at the time, there weren't a lot of places that kind of announced releases of games. So that's what E3 was supposed to be about. It was supposed to be for announcing games and getting retailers to buy the games to sell. And so that's what the point of E3 even today is, an industry showcase that normal people aren't supposed to go to it. And so it's not used for that anymore. It's a press event. It's like the Meet the Press night in Washington, except instead of Washington celebrating each other, it's publishers celebrating themselves. Basically, it's really dumb. It doesn't make sense. It's not necessary. The internet has provided the capacity for games to be announced by publishers themselves at any time of the year. So it doesn't make sense to have an event anymore for it.
All right, Steve, what do you have to say to all that?
I think it still is relevant.
All right.
The very fact that we're even talking about it right now shows that it's relevant, because we do still care about it, and we will still watch it, and we pay attention to it. It's kind of like an industry-wide event that really brings everyone together. I mean, even if it does have all the crazy showmanship and all that crazy stuff, it's something that kind of celebrates video games. It's just a place for all the fans of video games to just kind of come together and just get excited about, you know, the new games that are coming out. I feel like it's just kind of a way for some of the even like less enthusiastic people who are interested in games to kind of hear about some of these big games that are coming out. Because, I mean, we're like, all of us are really like hardcore gamers. We follow, you know, every update that comes out about video games. But there's a lot of people that still play games and they don't necessarily do that. But when they have a big event like this that brings everyone together, like everything that comes out of E3, everybody hears about it. It's like a really widely covered event all throughout, you know, even the general media. And I feel like we kind of need something like that to just kind of get the word out about new games that are coming out, which you wouldn't necessarily get unless you strictly followed games really closely. I think it's just kind of it's just a big stage for, you know, games to just be shown and people to hear about new games.
All right.
You know, if we got rid of E3, we wouldn't really have something like that.
All right. Nick, any rebuttal?
I mean, if E3 goes down and they put it next to the porn section again, I'm all for that. But yeah, I mean, Steve makes a good point. As long as it's continued to be fueled by Dew and Doritos, you know, you're going to have the bro crowd out. It's always going to sit out there and watch it. But I don't think that necessarily means that the ESA is going to continue to do it. I think eventually we might see a combination of everything. Because what the developers are doing is, where they used to hold back all the time, now we're starting to see like December seems to be the better time for a lot of these announcements and stuff. And I think we might start seeing either E3, if E3 turns into something else or whatnot, to make it more relevant again. But at the end of the day, like right now, I can't see the relevancy of it. It's, for me, like Steve said, you know, we pay attention to it and whatnot, but yeah, I mean, he makes a good argument there, so I can't really rebuttal very well about that. I just want to see porn mixed in with video games. I would be really excited for that.
All right. Kitty, what about you?
Yeah, no, it's true what he says about it being something we pay attention to, but yeah, I want to see it next to porn too. Yeah, it's something else I wanted to say about it though. I swear I won't go on for another 5 minutes. It's no longer necessary for the industry to thrive like it was when it began, and at this point it's more like a tradition that's been going on for a decade now. We don't need it, but I don't necessarily want to see it die either. It's interesting to watch. It's fun, but there's a lot of unnecessary parts to it, I think.
Okay.
Except for porn.
Yeah.
Except for porn.
All right, Steve. Anything to say?
I kind of agree that it doesn't necessarily have to exist in the exact same form that it is right now, but I think just the very fact of having a big industry-wide event once a year, similar to E3 every year, is really important to the industry. I mean, nothing really beats the drama that comes out when they reveal a new game on stage. I mean, some of that gets taken away nowadays with leaks and everything, but just that excitement
that.
that.
Go for it. Rebuttal.
All right, so my problem with it though is when it happens, yeah, there's some excitement because they're gonna announce stuff, but then for the past couple of years they've been announcing stuff that we've already known's been there. I feel like the majority of what the AAA titles, we see them just scattered throughout the year, announced whenever they willy dilly feel like it. And the only thing that really comes out of any kind of event is like PAX and stuff, where we start seeing indie games, and that's where they kind of announce this stuff. There's really not a whole lot of surprise left in E3 for me anymore.
Okay. Anybody else have to tag on to that?
Mm, no, not
No?
really.
All right, Shelby, was there any facts or anything was it clean around? Was there anything you
Yeah, it
noticed?
looked pretty clean to me. I looked through some of the stuff, especially the history stuff.
Even the
It
porn
looked
stuff,
clean.
that's clean.
uh, different kind of clean, but all right. I'm gonna have to go with Steve on this one actually, just because both of you were kind of like, I still want to see it, keep going and everything, and yeah, even the fact that we're talking about it is, we can tell it's relevant. So I'm gonna have to go with Steve on this one. Sorry, guys.
I'm fine with it.
Yeah, makes sense.
All right.
Bird in hell.
All right. For our next question, we will have best game that pushed hardware. Kind of give anybody who's watching this an idea. Like this would be like a game like a Crisis, or like a game on console that you saw that really pushed that system to show what it could do. So this time we will go Kitty. What do you have for that one?
Halo 4 on console, which I know is kind of cheating, but I can't think of a game that looked better on console than Halo 4 did. Granted, we can't see what it would have looked like on PC, but for as old as the hardware was working with, it did a really good job, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. See, Steve, what do you got?
I went with something kind of weird. I am saying Super Mario RPG on the Super Nintendo.
Ooh, okay. And why do you say that?
I think it did a whole lot of things that a lot of games at the time weren't doing. It allowed for the characters to move in a whole different range of movements, which a lot of Super Nintendo games didn't really let you move like that. It was kind of giving you the illusion that it was a 3D game when it really wasn't. It used in-game lighting as well to provide some of the shadows for the stairs and the pillars, and I mean, doing something like that on the Super Nintendo was kind of unheard of.
All right. Nick, what you got?
Doom 3. So Doom 3 back in the day was probably one of the first games I've ever seen that only pushed the hardware, but was OpenGL based. So it had a DirectX 9 loader in there, but it was mainly for sound. The renderer was actually OpenGL. So it not only pushed like Windows PCs, but also there was like a Linux and a Mac version, and then of course there was the console version, and which that was kind of whatever, but they couldn't do the outside stuff. But it had real-time lighting effects, or dynamic lighting, I should say. So everything could cast a shadow in the world where light could be put in a certain place. You could see a shadow or whatnot. And still to this day, 10 years later, like Carmack's like VR code for Oculus, like that when Palmer Luckey first came to him for the the first head-mounted display, it looked like it was like in a shoebox or whatever. That's where he first started writing code for VR. Is actually in the Doom 3 id Tech 4 engine. So that game is started a lot of firsts for a lot of other things, and there's a lot of other interesting things in there too, like the corners, like the rounded corners in the games, were sort of like a early Teslaization technology that Carmack came up with himself in software. So I just find that game to be groundbreaking. It wasn't like the kind of fake push the hardware like Crisis 3 or Metro 2033 where like the hardware would heat up and it wouldn't run just because it was poorly optimized. It was optimized very well, and it did push the hardware pretty well for the time.
All right. Kitty, any rebuttal? Or Dakota, as I should call you, I guess.
I wasn't around when that came out, so there's not much I can. I don't know a lot about what's behind it like that. Uh, I can't rebuttal just because I don't know, but it sounds good.
Anything to add to Halo 4 then?
uh, Not much. No, not really. Just that what Halo 4 did differently was just that it was working with hardware that couldn't change, I guess. I suppose Doom was probably expected, I mean, it was a PC title as well, so it was probably expected to eventually work with hardware that was past what it was intended for. Uh, so, yeah, that's pretty much all I had to add, really.
Okay, and Steve.
Yeah, that's actually something similar that Mario RPG did as well, is that it was one of the first games on the Super Nintendo that used the SA1 chip, which it was kind of like a newer chip that they started adding into some of the cartridges later in the Super Nintendo's life cycle. And I feel like by doing that, it kind of pushed it a little bit beyond some of the other games that were being released on the system. It also kind of gave them the chance to use Mode 7 in some interesting ways. So, like most games that used Mode 7 on the Super Nintendo, kind of had that same look to it where everything's kind of stretched and distorted, where they used it actually as part of the 3D backgrounds in the background to kind of help make that look a little bit more natural. So it was something that was a little bit different.
All right, Nick. Anything to say?
Nothing more to say other than I think Doom 3 is deserved of more props than it usually gets, just for it being sort of like the granddaddy for a lot of lighting that we use in common day 3D modeling and whatnot.
You have, well, for anyone, anybody have anything to say why one of the other games should not be included on this?
I would say, first of all, for Mario RPG, it's cool it has the SA1 chip in there. And it was really smart of Nintendo to design the system to be able to do that. But at the end of the day, the hardware would not have been able to do it without the add-on chip. And as cool as Mario RPG is, it's not. It was mostly pre-rendered like Donkey Kong Country. It's not a technique that we still use today. It's not doing anything that is still valuable in today's world. As far as Halo 4, I have nothing to say about it because I really didn't play it. I know it was a good-looking game, but I would say that's mostly artwork and mastery of like the artists on that game, and not so much the engine.
Mm-hmm.
All right. To you guys, any rebuttals to that, or anything to say about the other person's game?
Well, I will agree with how you said the Mario RPG used the silicon graphics and had the pre-rendered images and everything like that. It's true that it's not really used today. But one of the things that was actually impressive about it was because it was done like that, and Mario had all the different movements that he could move, so he moved in 8 different directions and it had all the characters like that. It culminated in a whole lot of different sprite sheets, which was way, way more images than a lot of other Super Nintendo games used. So while that necessarily wasn't that impressive, the fact that they were able to compress all that and fit it onto a cartridge was kind of cool, I thought.
All right. Any last statements, guys? All right. Let's see here. Well, Kitty, with Halo 4, I feel like you just didn't go enough into detail, so I'm gonna knock you out on this.
Okay.
On why it really pushed it. Now, between Mario RPG and Doom 3, you guys went a lot into detail on how actually it works in hardware and everything. But I'm gonna have to go with Doom 3 on this one. Just because, as Nick kind of said, it kind of set the bar, and I mean, almost it kind of is the granddaddy of modern game graphics. Is kind of the thing that pushed it where we are now. Where Mario RPG did a lot of stuff, but it was still pre-rendered and a lot of things like that. So Nick, you went on that one.
Yeah.
So woo. All right. So question number 3. Best boss battle of the last 5 years, and we are going to go with Steve on this one.
All right. So originally I was going to go with something from Shovel Knight, but I thought those were kind of too old school. So what I actually am choosing is a character named Dolly in Killer is Dead. I don't know if any of you guys have played it, but it was pretty cool.
Okay.
Oh, what Dolly was she's kind of like this creepy red-cloaked woman who has like skeleton arms, and she's actually really relevant to the story in the fact that she's kind of like a reincarnation of a childhood friend that the main character Mondo had. And her powers is that she manipulates dreams and memories and kind of does a whole lot of like psychological things that messes with the character's head. So when the very first part of the battle kind of starts where it's like a cutscene where he's having like a flashback to his childhood with seeing his childhood friend drowning. And he goes to try to rescue her, and she like pops out of the water, and she's like this crazy demon and starts attacking him. And so throughout the fight, she's kind of like creating these weird illusions that are like appearing and shooting lasers and stuff all over the place. Which, I mean, that's kind of cool, but that's not the unique part. The unique part of the boss battle is that after you start doing damage to Dolly, eventually the screen just starts flashing red, and all of a sudden you're kind of greeted with this weird, like, the camera just changes, like, because it's a third-person game, and then all of a sudden it goes into first-person mode, and you have, like, these weird red veins all, like, around the edge of the screen, and you have, like, these demon hands in front of you, and you're kind of, like, moving the controller, like, what's going on here? And you finally start to realize that all of a sudden you're seeing from the point of view of the monster that you were fighting, and you can kind of see your character running around in the background, and you have to like try to navigate your character over to the monster through the first-person camera, the point of view of the monster itself. So it kind of gives you a really weird, unique perspective that I really can't think of any other games that have ever done that before. And it's not really like it's like a feature they advertised in the game or anything. It's just something they throw at you as a big surprise, like, whoa, what's going on here? And you have to kind of figure it out.
All right. Well, I guess we will go with Nick next. What you got for me? Definitely interesting, Steve.
Alucard versus Richter Belmont in Castlevania Symphony of the Night. Mainly because that fight could be done in two ways. So you go into the room normally, and you would just beat up on Richter until he died.
Okay.
And then the game
wait,
would end.
wait, you say this is Symphony of the Night?
Yeah. So you beat up on Richter, it would end the game. Right there.
Okay, so, but Symphony of the Night, how old is Symphony of the Night? Isn't that like
10 years?
10 years now?
Oh, is this supposed to be a new one?
Yeah, it's supposed to be in the last 5 years.
5 years.
Man. I didn't even have this question written down, so I was just going by the seat of my pants. Then I'm going to have to go with my most fun one in the last 5 years was probably Super Mario Brother or Super Mario Land on the 3DS. 3D Land, I guess is what it is. Bowser versus Mario. Because normally in most other fights when you see Bowser, you're just like stepping on some spot or him to end it, or maybe hit like a battle axe or something, I don't know, kind of bridge underneath them. On this one it had some of that, but then it was like in stages, and it would like you would like get in this kind of like dramatic effect where as you're going up platforming, he would shoot fireballs and you would see like the destructibility and stuff, and it was kind of really well done. I had a lot of fun with it, but as far as well done boss battles, I haven't seen too many in the past 5 years.
So I figured this might be a hard one. Kitty, what do you got for me?
Yeah, I haven't experienced a lot of boss battles in the last few years either, so this one's kind of hard for me. I imagine I'm probably kind of cheating by saying this, but would you let the alien from Alien Isolation pass on that?
Explain it, and we'll see.
Okay, so he's not. I mean, he manages, or it. I don't know. I guess it technically doesn't have a gender. It manages to be the foremost enemy in the game, but yet isn't consistently around. Its introduction in the game is great. It's perfect. It's thrilling. Every encounter you have with it is not quite as thrilling, but still consistently feels the same no matter how many times you see it. It's a lot of fun. I'm a big sucker for scary games, so it's a big deal to me to consistently get that feeling every time, despite it. I mean, that's one of the major problems with scary games or even movies. If you, no matter how many times you experience it, it's never as good as the first time. And despite that, it still consistently manages to be fun every time you experience it, and that's why I think it's perhaps cheaty as a boss, but I'd still call it a boss. I'd still call it a boss.
All right. So let's see here. All right, Steve. Any rebuttals or anything to add on?
Not really.
All
I had to pick mine, so.
right. Nick, what about you?
Alien Isolation's a good game. However, seeing there's no like, I like what he's saying about the consistency, but I don't know if I would necessarily call it a boss. As far as Steve, I just don't have any experience with the game that he's talking about or played. So, sounds great, but I don't know, anything about it to rebuttal on. So,
All right, and Kitty, what you got?
Same thing with Steve. It sounds really interesting. I can't think of anything that even comes close to doing that same idea. Again, I haven't even heard of the game, so I can't really add or subtract from that. I'd
All right.
agree with
All right.
Nick, though.
Calling it.
Oh,
Winner Steve.
okay.
Woo!
Oh, you guys gotta play the
I
game.
kind of wanted to watch the video of it.
All right. Well, Shelby, was there anything in there that anybody messed up on or anything? I don't think there was. It sounded clean to me.
No, I checked the dates and then I kind of checked the description on Steve's game because he went really into detail
Mm-hmm.
and it seemed all good. Like I kind of want to watch the video and just see how that best.
Yeah, I have
Just wanna
heard of
go.
it. Because I think maybe it was
It's one
you,
of the-
Steve, that told me about it like a year ago or something. But yeah,
It
it
was
sounded really
really
cool.
interesting.
Man, you pulled that one out of nowhere. Okay. Next would be worst controller ever, and we are gonna start with Nick on this one. What you got? What
sorry,
is so bad?
5200.
Wait, what?
5200?
Yeah,
Why
I
is
think
it so bad?
because it's a piece of shit. Thing sucks. So first of all, you hold it. It looks like a phone. You hold it like a phone. It's got a keypad on the bottom that almost never did anything. All the rubber buttons on it are like the worst, shittiest, fucking cheap ass plastic or rubber ever. It's like after a year, just like they split apart, like that rubber in like your computer case does, and just becomes absolutely useless. Had a joystick that didn't auto center. It was like one of the first analog joysticks, I think. But the damn thing didn't auto center. You move it to one side, just like a floppy dick. It didn't even go back. And for games like Pac-Man that use digital, the digital like actually would register once the stick was all the way to the side. So with as much motion as that thing happened, when you have to do like quick motions, and most games back then that were actually digital, the thing was fucking impossible. You're just like trying to get the damn thing. It's the worst goddamn controller. And the thing that made it even worse is all other Atari systems had the RS-232 serial port, which is like a PC port too. Even the same thing Sega Genesis used. So like say on the 7800 or whatever. That damn thing, you could if their stupid controller was also very similar to it, but actually better. If that broke, you could take a 2600 controller, plug it in, no problem. This thing, no, it was proprietary. There was nothing else that used that connector. So if it broke, you're just fucked. Worst goddamn controller ever. I would shit on that thing in a heartbeat.
All right. Let's see. B. Kitty, what you got for me?
Okay, so the Wii Classic controller, the basic, not the Pro version, it looked like it felt as thin and as flimsy as a rice patty, and and it was awful. It was all white, just like classic, Wii peripherals always are, and it had the awkwardest hand positioning ever. It was almost like oval shaped, and the sticks were weird. They were like in the center, like just far enough away from your fingers, and just down too low so that it felt weird to use. And it because it was so thin, it felt like you were moving around sticks that were like glued to the top. It was super, super awful. The I guess like directional pad was really mushy, and you never felt like you hit it. There were 4 buttons, X, Y, the other two, AB, and they were super mushy and like didn't always register when you pressed them in. And then it had triggers on the left and right. They felt empty, like there was a ton of space in between that didn't like dead zones, I guess. But it was even worse than that. They felt like actual empty space. And then it had these like the way the PlayStation controllers have like a left bumper, left trigger, stuff like that. It had these two little circular buttons towards the center of the controller that didn't make any sense at all. It was like it was trying to copy the later controller. No, there was a later Wii controller that had something similar to the PlayStation, except it just had two buttons and then two bumpers instead of four like trigger bumpers. It was awful, atrocious. Couldn't use it. Oh, and in the center there were three more buttons that was like home and then
Minus and plus.
yes, that
Yeah.
was it. And they were super, super awful. It had like very, very little travel time, very mushy, rarely activated, awful all around.
All right, Steve, can you top these two?
So I actually went with the Wiimote itself. I think it added some interesting things, but the problem with it was that it tried so hard to be different that it duplicated a lot of the multi-platform games because it was so weird. Like the buttons are in really awkward positions. It doesn't have the same amount of buttons as a lot of the other controllers do. They don't have all the required buttons on it that even the classic controller itself has. Because it had the motion control built in, they kind of forced developers to feel like they had to use the motion control, and I think that led to some really bad controls. Everything had to have like the waggle Wiimote function. It was just terrible. And I just think because they tried to simplify it and make it really streamlined, they thought they were doing something cool, but at the same time, it's too far away from a traditional controller.
All right, Nick, rebuttals.
Okay, so for the Wii Remote, yes, I agree, but at least it had some good things. Like the D-pad on it felt really good. You could turn it sideways for classic games, which is really the only thing I cared about on the Wii anyways. As far as the classic controller goes, yes, it kind of looked like a half taco or something.
Yeah.
They did do some smart things. I didn't think the buttons were that bad compared to the things I've tried in my life. They were
Yeah.
pretty good. They were snappy. They were smart enough to know that the Wiimote's going to be on your dick somewhere, so the controller wire had to go on the bottom. I'm telling you, the Atari 5200, and you said like it felt like it was like cheap, dude. I'm telling you, the Atari 5200 controller's plastic had the consistency of cardboard. You dropped it, it fucking shattered. Okay, it was a piece of awful shit. It felt like it was full of hollow. It was the worst goddamn thing. Try playing Defender on that motherfucker. You're gonna last about 5 minutes. It's a goddamn horrible controller. I wouldn't wish it on anybody. And to make it even worse, on the Atari 5200, the biggest stupid system ever, that they even had to like have the power come through the same box as the RF for some goddamn reason. They gave you a nice little case to put the controllers and everything in the top. Yeah, that motherfucker broke too.
All right.
Oh, by the way, Atari, see this? Atari, fuck you.
All right, Kitty, what you got?
I don't have anything to add to that. That's just
Oh, nothing. Well,
Yeah.
what about the Wiimote? What do you got?
no. I mean, it was. I didn't hate it. I didn't think it was great either. But no, I mean, he won. He won. Yeah, Nick won. Yeah, there's nothing else to add to any of this. He won.
What about you, Steve? You got anything against any of
And I
that?
think that's probably an objectively worse controller. The only thing about it, just to kind of compare it to what else was around at the time, which I mean, I'm sure a lot of the controllers from that time weren't very good either. Where when you take something like the Wiimote or the classic controller and compare it to what the competition's doing, it looks a lot worse in comparison. But
All right. The thing is, I have actually used all three of these, and yeah, I'm gonna have to go with the 5200 controller. That thing's a piece of shit.
Thank you. I think it's fucking horrible.
It was.
It's a blight on mankind.
I mean, last time I used one, I was probably like 8 or something. But yeah, it was pretty bad. We're like the
worst thing-
Wii.
The worst
Go
thing
ahead.
too is they had the rubber on the joysticks, like the soft rubber. Did you ever know any kid, that, like any family that had like anybody that was like 7-year-old or under, that did not have the fucking disgusting ass teeth marks in the top of the stick? It's like they used it as like a chew toy too. Like that literally tells you what you think of the Atari
Yeah.
controllers. They're fucking. Ugh.
Yeah, like the classic controller, like the old one, I mean, yeah, the newer one, the second generation one, was a lot better. But the other one was okay. It was kind of awkward to hold and everything, but it was almost the same thing as the Super NES controller with sticks. And then the Wiimote, as much as I hate it, and is probably at least of last gen, yeah, it was definitely the worst controllers. But there's definitely been things that have been worse, and yeah, 5200 is definitely one of those. So, uh, all right. So next, we will have the game that you wish didn't exist in a beloved franchise, and we will go with Kitty on this one first. So, what game do
Borderlands,
you wish? What?
Borderlands the pre-sequel.
The
Borderlands
pre-sequel.
pre-sequel. Yes,
Wow.
absolutely. It was if okay. So first of all, it was contracted out to a different company. Gearbox didn't work on it. I don't even think many of the developers that worked on previous Borderlands games worked on it.
Do you know who worked on it?
I can't remember the name of the company, but they're from Australia.
Uh,
So
Shelby, can you check on that for us? I'm more out of
2K
curiosity.
Marin, or what was 2K Marin?
yes, I think that's
Yeah, I
right.
think you're right. Yeah.
Yeah, and Gearbox had done the same thing to Aliens Colonial Marines, and we know how that went. So if take your idea of that game and kind of think about what that would do to Borderlands. That's what happened. It wasn't an awful game, but it was a black mark on an otherwise really good franchise, I think.
All right. Steve, what game you wish didn't exist?
I would go with Final Fantasy XI. While there's definitely games in the Final Fantasy series that are probably worse games, I think Final Fantasy XI was the one that kind of led Square on the downward trajectory that kind of derailed everything about that series that was good. I think for one, it kind of gave them a taste of like the subscription-based model that MMOs use, and it kind of made them kind of use that for a lot of their other games. They went into mobile and all that kind of stuff where they release little small packages of information and stuff, and they don't really release like the full blockbuster games that they used to anymore. I think that's kind of what kind of started it. Also, because it's an MMO and it's a never-ending game that's constantly being updated, it ties up a lot of their talented developers so that they can't work on anything else. I wrote down a list of 3 of the top guys from Final Fantasy XI. Koichi Ishii, who directed the game. Before that, he directed Secret of Mana, and after Final Fantasy XI, there was no Secret of Mana anymore. He's tied up working on that. There was Hiromichi Tanaka, who produced Chrono Cross, Xenogears, and part of the Mana games. And since 2002, he's only worked on Final Fantasy XI and 14. And even Hironobu Sakaguchi, who is the father of Final Fantasy, never worked on another Square game after Final Fantasy XI. So I feel like just the fact that they made that game just kind of just changed the whole direction of the company and led them downhill.
All right. Geez, it does seem like a lot of people went into that and like nothing happened after that. All right, Nick, what you got?
Well, I haven't played Borderlands pre-sequel yet. I probably will when I get the Shield, and that makes me kind of sad from what I heard now. What Steve said just sounded like he was talking to a baby or something with some of those names. I don't know. It's like voices or something. It's like Mashiguchi. I don't know. Anyways, I would honestly, I would say for me, I like Resident Evil 1 and I like Resident Evil 4. Probably most of the rest of the Resident Evil games, but specifically, I will go on 6 because 6 came out later and it was so bad that I couldn't even get through like the actual demo of the game because for some reason after tank controls and other Resident Evil games and especially Resident Evil 4 somehow in 6 they managed to fuck up the controls even worse. It's like how I don't understand how pressing in on a stick makes you roll all of a sudden. That doesn't make any. Okay, enough said. Resident Evil 6, piece of shit.
All right, Kitty, what you got to say? Why is your game worse than the other ones?
Okay, so it took all the great attributes of Borderlands series, really memorable characters, all kinds of interesting gun combinations, and basically removed them. None of the characters in the pre-sequel were interesting or memorable. One of the biggest points about Borderlands 2 actually was the driving force of the entire storyline was the main enemy, Jack. He it's a really interesting psychological story of how Handsome Jack becomes the enemy previously, which is why you'd think that the story behind how he gets that way would be interesting in the pre-sequel, but instead all of his lines are boring, dry, not interesting. He's a good guy instead of a bad guy. It basically skips the part you're actually interested about finding out about, and so it's just missing all the hallmark interesting points of the series.
All right. All right, Steve. What makes yours worse than the other ones?
I think, I mean, not only was it stripped of everything that made Final Fantasy good, it also, I just think the impact that it had on the series is what is really the terrible thing about it, is that it wasn't just that this was a bad game, it's that it derailed the entire franchise afterwards, and I think it all stemmed from them developing that game.
All right. Nick, how about you, Resident Evil 6? What makes it worse?
It's not a scary game.
Okay.
It's literally an action game with a bunch of zombies. There's nothing in there that really made me jump at all from like the short time that I played it, and it seems to be the trend going on with most other Resident Evil games. It's becoming actiony, and it's not even like a good kind of action like Dead Space 3. It's just boring, and the fact that they already had a game that had good controls, even on the Wii it had good controls. Like, what the fuck? It had good controls on the Wii, and they fucked it up. That's all I got. It's fucked up controls. It's an action game. What the hell?
All right. Can someone tell me, like, I get it that all, like, 3-year games have pissed you guys off, but, like,
I get pissed off about everything.
right. But in comparison, like, what someone else, like, someone else's game, like, why is that not as much of a killer as your game? Anybody got something?
I would probably say for Borderlands, at least the formula of Borderlands is still there. There's still missions and stuff. I understand what he's saying if you care about the story, but there's a lot of people who do play the game that don't care about it. And I just think they were trying to do something different with the moon and the air conservation and stuff like that. But from what I understand, there's a lot of people who still play it, so they don't inherently think it's that terrible. For Steve, I got nothing. Sorry.
All right. Katie, you have anything to say about the other two games?
I didn't play Resident Evil. I've never played a Final Fantasy game, so there's not much I can add to it other than that.
You're probably better off for it.
All I can say is that I'm probably not correct here in having the worst option, because it's true, a lot of people like the Borderlands series for reasons that I don't.
Fight for it. No.
Yeah, come on, fight.
Fight.
Let's get to it.
I really can't add much more to it. It's just
All
it's
right.
not what I wanted in the game.
All right, Steve, anything to say about the other two games?
I just feel like the other two games can still, like this, as I keep saying, like the series, but I think the series can still recover from those games. Where I think with Final Fantasy 11, it's just a dead hole. It's gone. Like, I feel like because of that game, everything's just ruined.
I'm gonna have to go with Steve on this one. Oh, actually, wait. What you got? I'll give you one last shot. What do you got?
Final Fantasy 12 was good. What the fuck are you talking about? It's actually a good game. It was different, but people liked it.
That's a whole different discussion. I do not.
Damn it. Shelby, you got anything to add in here that might help me out?
Not really. Nope. Yeah, I can't help you with this one.
I'm still probably gonna go with Final Fantasy 11, and the main reason is because 5 kind of started with the actiony stuff with Resident Evil 6, and 6 just kind of took that to a whole nother thing. Where 11 was, it was a huge change, and it was pretty much the end of that series as everyone knew it. With pre-sequel, I mean everyone's still playing it, and I mean it's really hard with Resident Evil 6 and the pre-sequel because those were the last games of that series to come out, and there will be new ones. Where 11, we see the impact. I'm gonna have to go with that one. All right. So, yeah, Steve won. So, on that one. All right. So, the question here is the last question, unless we end up with a tie, will be: is VR important? And who was the last one to go? Sorry.
Was me, wasn't it?
Was it you? All right. Well, then it would be Kitty. What you got?
Uh, is VR important? It's kind of a mixed bag. I think it will be, but it's not right now. I don't think it's far enough along, even though great strides have been made. Uh, that and there's not a lot of games that are going to support it for a while, and I don't think any of the developers are super itching to get it in their games yet. Maybe that's because they haven't been exposed to it. Personally, I haven't tried VR in person yet, so take that with a grain of salt. I don't see it mattering for a while yet, so I'm going to go more towards no than yes, but I think it's kind of a mix of both.
Okay. All right. We got mixed on Kitty. All right. So, Nick, how you feeling?
Right now, I'm gonna have to say no, just because it hasn't proved itself in the market yet. Um, Mainly, we've seen this before with other technologies, like motion control. They had the Sega Activator, which we got to see Siskel and Ebert use, and it was terrible. There was the Power Glove, but eventually that went along, and we got better motion controls. But as you can see today, most gamers still prefer not to use motion controls. Same thing with the DS. It brought a second screen on there, and it just basically devolved down into a different way to select menus instead of hitting start to go to a menu. So now with VR, what we're seeing is like a lot of demos for like pilot, games that we already had, like games like Flying as a Pilot. What was it? The Eve Online game, the whatever, the jet flying game. You got Star Citizen that's doing it, and then there's like a lot of first-person shooters. As far as like the demos, haven't seen anything that would be like a long-term, maybe game that I could play it, or like a demo that I could see it would like turn into like something bigger. It's cool tech, but at the end of the day, and it pains me to say, I haven't seen anything yet that would make it relevant or even important.
All right. Steve, what you got?
I think it is important just because it creates such a different atmosphere than you get with traditional games. Yes, it's different, but it kind of gives you more of an immersive environment that it can be used even a lot outside of gaming. Like a lot of military and Air Force people are using it for their training simulations. It's used a lot like in the medical field, even for like firemen, like for truck driving and all that kind of stuff. Like I feel like because it has a lot of uses that go beyond gaming, I think it's something that's here to stay. Just because that's kind of what's going to drive the technology, and gaming is kind of something that will follow along with it.
All right. All right, Kitty. Since you're the mixed bag one. What do you? You can stay mixed. That's fine.
Mhm.
What you got to say to those two?
Yeah, Nick was right about it not being proven yet, and partly that's because it's so new yet. This time, I don't think we're gonna see it die like we have with previous technologies like 3D. Even that never really picked off. I think VR will eventually, but it's gonna take. It's one of those things you have to experience to really appreciate too. So until you see them in most retail stores where you can try them out in person, it's going to be hard to sell it to most people. And a lot of people still get sick from it. That's another thing. It's hard to sell something to someone who is sick when they use it. So and there are people working on trying to get that to go away and fix it, and that'll happen eventually, but it's going to be a while, I think, before most people are comfortable with it. And then I do want to see it used for immersion in games and other things, and I just don't think we're there yet.
Okay. Nick, any rebuttals too?
Yeah, so my whole problem with that statement about it being widely available to other like formats and whatnot, VR has actually been around for a while. When I was in the Army in '04, they brought in like a tractor trailer thing that actually had virtual reality setups for us to train in. and it was cool, but at the end of the day, it still felt like I was just playing a video game, even though like it had the gun sensors and everything. There's nothing inherently there that I like. No real world. There's nothing in that training that in real world would not be more valuable to me as a soldier. VR is a good way to maybe like get your habits down for like training, like what you do in like this certain situation and something. But field training is still more important to me than anything basically like playing a video game. It's I still don't see the use for it yet. Maybe something like HoloLens where you can mix real world and what do they call it,
Augmented reality.
augmented reality, something like that, where you can actually have your heads up and all that, like actually in the real world. That'd probably be more important to me, at least from a soldier's point of view, like being able to have like the nav, like have your navigation or whatever up like that. But for my short time with it in video games and in the military, I didn't see anything that really proved it yet.
All right. Steve, what you got for me?
I think just because it's not 100% proven yet doesn't mean that we should just completely dismiss it. I mean, I think it may not be important like today, like right now, but the technology is still evolving, and I think it's still getting to the point where eventually it will become important and relevant to the game industry and just I mean, the tech industry as a whole. I mean, I feel like if we had kind of given up on some of these other kind of things, like we might not have gotten a lot of the evolutions that we did in gaming. Like even if you go back to like the 64 era and like some of those early games in the 64 era, like you play them and like they have really terrible camera controls, and looking at that compared to today, it looks terrible. But I mean, that didn't mean we should just dismiss 3D games because the 3D cameras weren't quite where we wanted them to be back then. Like, that kind of stuff evolves over time.
All right. All right. Any last statements from anyone?
Yeah, real quick. Like, I do think it is a good tool for like some like beginners training for different things, but like I wouldn't want to like put this on an upcoming doctor, have him do video game surgery in the damn thing, and then all of a sudden come out and never haven't touched anybody to start working on me. So it's like right now, it will be probably maybe a good tool one day, but at the end, there's nothing more important than like real life training, and I don't think you can get that from VR.
All right, Kitty.
Yeah, again, it's more or less reiterating. I don't think it matters now, but it will in the future. And I don't think we're saying that we should give up on it. I don't think anybody thinks that, but it's just not ready yet. So again, I'm leaning more towards the no right now, yes in the future thing.
That's how I'm separating you from everyone else.
Right.
Like in between, like you got not
I'm
right
more
now, but it will be.
perhaps. Yeah.
All right. Anything else onto that?
No, that's it.
All right, Steve. Got anything for me?
I mean, I feel like the argument is kind of that it's being used in place of real world training, which I don't think that's necessarily the case. I think it is good as a tool in addition to real world training. And I still think playing like a training simulator in VR is more helpful than sitting in front of a monitor and playing a video game. I can't see that immersive environment wouldn't be more useful to a training simulation.
Okay. Shelby, you got anything?
Well,
fact checking?
yeah, I've been fact checking. Thank you very much.
Mhm.
Yeah, I started looking actually to when the visual reality stuff started like appearing, but it's I don't like. I was thinking of the training stuff and.
I will say all of you guys took this in a totally different direction I thought you would, to be honest.
Yeah.
You guys went for like training and like in real world uses instead of just gaming, which that's totally cool. I was just surprised.
Like Like, do you want me to say who I kind of agree with, or you want me to
No, well, I mean, just tell me like facts, like who
Okay.
laid me some facts here of
Okay,
what they said.
well, for like the training stuff, there was one that was developed in like 1966. It was for a like flight simulator, and there's tons of other trainings that are mentioned
Mhm.
here. But yeah, it was early on. It wasn't just recent.
Right.
But there's really nothing else I could have checked. It's just opinion.
Uh,
The problem with this is it's a lot of speculation for the
it,
future.
right.
Yeah.
All right, Shelby, give me a vote. Shelby, give me a vote. Who'd you like? Help me out here.
I like Steve's argument. I thought it was.
That's what I was leaning towards too. I'm gonna go with the Steve.
Congrats. Although you're wrong. How's that DS menu selecting working out for you?
Like, I think Steve, like, he made the argument of like, will it replace real world training? No, but it's definitely a good helpful tool, and I think he's right. It's kind of that was a great point, and it's still like a fun little thing to add on to where instead of just totally 100% training, So Nick, you made a lot of good points of it has been around for a while, and still evolving, and it won't replace real world training or anything like that, but it's still a helpful tool. And Kitty, thank you for coming on and everything. It was a good argument too for the mixed, but I think Steve just made a couple more points, and I had to give it to him.
Yeah.
And Steve, you are our winner this week.
Woo!
You get nothing
Actually, okay, so for
but a
next
scowl.
All right, so for next week, Steve, you have the option. You can come back on, and you can either host if you want, or come and back with being the fact checker. You want to do any of those?
I'll be the fact checker.
You'll be the fact checker next week. Okay. So, yeah, I want to thank all of you guys. Of course, anybody who ends up watching this, follow us on Facebook. Subscribe if you like the video. Also, give us suggestions of questions if you want. If you didn't like some of the questions that we had, well, then give us new ones. Also, any feedback is welcomed. Also, you can follow me on Twitter at merchant_lemon. Nick is at Cell Processing. Kitty, do you have a Twitter?
Yes, it's at GNRL_kitty. General Kitty.
All right. Shelby, do you have a Twitter? I don't think you do. Nope. And Steve, we can follow him at
Steve Rakar, Rakar.
All right, and thanks everyone for watching. Hopefully, see you next week.
I'm just glad we could agree at the 5200 controller shit.
Oh, this shit.